Happy to see all of you here gathered in the huddle stage, or also known as the silent stage. And hopefully you will get a chance to get a bit of a calmer experience here, take some rest from the outside fuss, and delve into the conversations of defense, cybersecurity, and the obvious one, starting and building a startup. My name is Lena. I'm a board member of Riga Tech Girls. I've been a part of this community and the tech ecosystem in Latvia, and it's really lovely to see another year of TechChill, bigger and each year also better. So without further ado, I'm gonna introduce the first panel discussion of today. So Paradigm Shift, is the VC industry reconsidering defense tech? And then first up, I will invite the moderator of this discussion, Benjamin Bathke, the entrepreneurial journalist, freelance at Deutsche Welle. Welcome, Benjamin.
Thank you. Good morning. Can everybody hear me okay? Just checking. Okay, looks good. So I'm Ben Bathke. I'm an entrepreneurial freelance journalist, and welcome to TechChill 2023 and the huddle stage. We're here to talk about a topic that lost some of its controversy today. But let's dive right in. Join me in welcoming our panelists to the stage. Come on up. We'll make the best use of our 35 minutes that we have. While these gentlemen take a seat, I would like to encourage you to think of questions. We'll set aside the last 5 minutes or so for questions. So if you have any questions for these gentlemen, then please you have a chance to ask them in like the last 5 minutes that we have here during at the end of our panel discussion. So I already introduced myself, and I'll let the 3 other panelists do that because they know themselves obviously a lot better than I do. So let's start with Brett. Brett, tell us a little bit about yourself and your work in the defense tech sector.
Good morning. Can anyone in the crowd hear me? Give me a second.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay.
Good morning. My name is Brad Lunn.
I can
I'm
hardly
with
hear
a
him.
company called General Atomics. A lot of people don't know the name General Atomics, but what we're best known for is the large Predator class unmanned aircraft that you see on TV all the time. We run a strategic finance operation where we make investments in small and emerging companies as a corporate venture capital perspective. So as a corporate venture capital initiative, we are a little bit different than what you might see with traditional venture capital. We have different objectives and different aims, different capabilities. And so we use corporate venturing to help us to extend our own corporate strategy, continue to improve our products, both current and future product lines. We improve our processes, and we can actually make changes to our business model as a result of the types of companies that we find and are able to integrate their technology into a larger platform.
All right, thanks, Brett. So Brett represents the strategic corporate VC perspective, and let's move on to Matiss. Matiss, tell us a little bit about yourself and your connection to the defense tech sector.
Yes, my name is Matiss. I'm the managing partner for Buildit Latvia. That is a hardware accelerator and investment fund. So what we do, we invest in early stage teams who are coming up with the idea to develop kind of smart device, IoT device, hardware, whatever you can put on the table, you can touch, you can feel it. So this is what we do. We help early stage startups to become investable. So also about myself, I was serving in National Guard, so this is my connection also to defense. Also, I like the martial arts, so I like also to protect myself if something happens. So briefly about me.
Thanks. So this is the Accelerator perspective, or what I call the startup entrepreneur support perspective. And then to my left, we have another Benjamin. Thank you. Benjamin Wolba. So yeah, let's first put on the headphones because I'm actually having a little bit of a hard time hearing my panelists. So this is the left side. Okay, hopefully this will be better. Okay, great. So Benjamin, tell us a little bit about yourself, your work with Lunar Ventures and your connection to the defense tech sector.
Absolutely. Yeah, good morning, everyone. We are Lunar Ventures. We're looking for computer science moonshots. So it's not space tech, but it could be. In general, we're a software infrastructure investor. So we're looking for people developing new algorithms, new databases, maybe even new quantum computers or new AI chips. And that could have various applications. So we're a industry agnostic, purely financially driven investor that comes in at pre-seed, seed stage, and helps mostly founders on the technology side. You got an innovation, 3 people and some innovation, and then you build your first product out of that, and we help you shape that first product. So we're all tech nerds, ex-operators. I'm a physicist with my PhD in theoretical physics, founded a small publishing house, which is a cute side project. And now at Lunar Ventures, I'm looking into everything with a certain physics component. Could be lidar for autonomous driving, AI for materials, fusion, quantum computing, all the fancy technologies.
Right, okay, so thank you, Benjamin. So as you heard, Benjamin brings the VC perspective to our discussion here today. Now, let's get started, and I would like to ask you about something that you might not expect, but that is kind of the, I want to say, female elephant in the room, if you will. So if this mantle is any indication, the defense tech sector is likely to be even more male-dominated, both on the founder side and also the VC side, as the rest of the technology sector. So why is that? Is there a specific reason from your perspective? Are there any female founders? Are there female VCs? There's one. Okay, if you have a question later on, happy to take it. That's great to hear, great to see. But yeah, from your perspective, is the diversity, does the defense tech sector have an even greater diversity problem than the rest of the industry? Anybody who wants to go first? Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, maybe you also have heard that the hardware is hard, the hardware world is only for the men, so all bad, no women there. It's not so. It's not true. Yes, there is, but let's say the female founders are not so many among hardware startups. But when we talk about the defense sector, so it's my experience, so there the difference is not so huge. Of course, then it goes back to the hardware companies. So yes, in the hardware companies, mainly the founders are the, let's say, the men's, but not too many females. But about the defense, I would say it's 50-50, but it's my experience.
Okay, so it's mostly because of the hardware side of things. Yeah.
Yes, this
so
is my
unique.
assumption
Yeah.
and my experience.
Right, okay. Any other comments?
Yeah, I haven't really put together the side that it was the hardware-centric side. It was tended to be more male. Mm-hmm. But I would also concur that on the software side, there tends to be more females involved, and I think that's something that's continuing to grow.
On the software side, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Anything from your side about the lack of diversity in hardware tech, or yeah, in defense tech specifically?
Yeah, it's funny contributing as a man, since there are no females on stage. I guess generally it's a question of role models. Like, when you look into biotech, when you look into psychology, into these, traditionally more female-oriented domains of science, you'll find more undergraduates that then go on to become postgraduates, eventually start a company, do something around medtech, health tech. You'll find a lot of them there. But then I guess when you look into, say, quantum computing, when you look into really hard tech, fusion, materials, I guess it's also a matter of having other role models you could take inspiration from and then think, oh, if she could do this, I could do this too. And that's a matter of fact that we could work on, I guess.
Okay, thanks. So looking forward to hearing your perspective on this later. And with that, let's move on to some of the nitty-gritty and the current state, let's say, of the defense tech fund. Now, obviously, since the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine that started last year in February, the defense tech and the defense industry and the military in general have become much less of a taboo and so forth. And so there's been an uptick in military spending, etc. And we all knew these stories. So I was wondering what you have observed, let's say, since over the last 14 months or so, in the defense tech sector when it comes to startups, VC, etc., VC activity, etc. Maybe starting with you, Brad. What have you been observing over the past 14 months or so?
Well, I would say that I have a couple observations. In Europe, I see a significant change in more interest in defense. And a lot of times, tech isn't labeled as defense tech. And I don't necessarily look for things that are just called defense tech. We look for things that may be relevant for defense. And someone who starts a company may not have even considered it to be defense relevant when they started. So as an example, there was a company that we found that their initial roots were developing better tennis rackets. So they had a technology that could make better composites, stronger, lighter composites, and so they thought sporting goods was a great application, and so they started down that path. As it turns out, it had other applications where it can make aircraft stronger, better, stiffer, less expensive, and make improvements there. And so while they didn't label themselves as defense relevant, in fact they are. So you see, I think you're seeing more openness to using technology in ways that are useful to solving more problems than what they originally were targeted at. In the United States, I haven't seen really a change. There has always been interest in things that are defense relevant, and so I haven't really noticed a change in it. There are economic factors. There's been a decline in venture capital investment in Europe, but I think that has a wider implication from general financial conditions and interest rate movements.
Right. So you touched on this kind of dual use aspect of the defense sector and making it hard to define. We'll come back to that at a later point. I think that's important to explore a little more. But maybe one quick follow-up question then. So in terms of VC activity and also interest from founders, just in the ecosystem, is there anything else that you've been observing? I mean, of course, there's also NATO. We can talk about the NATO VC activity and innovation activity also at a later point. But anything else before I ask for the other comments?
Yeah, so a couple of things. Because of the amount of dollars has declined in venture capital investment in the last year in Europe, a pretty strong trend. The number of deals have also declined. And so deal sizes are still about the same, but you're seeing venture capital being much more selective in what they were doing. There was a lot of exuberance in that marketplace.
And you mean in general, or
in general?
Yeah, but I was asking specifically about defense tech,
and so
for the lack of a better, more accurate
and so
term.
it changes that lowering tide affects all boats.
Right. Okay. So that's kind of counterintuitive in a way, because there's the military spending is going up, et cetera, and the interest is going up. Okay. But there's you saying the deal size is the same, but the overall investment is going down?
So deal sizes are similar.
Similar.
And it depends. There are two different types of venture capital. There is what is commonly called traditional venture capital, which Benjamin is a part of, and the focus is primarily financial. And then what publishing companies would call non-traditional venture capital, which are guys like us, corporate venture capital, hedge fund investment, and the like.
But,
Hedge fund investment and the like.
oh, now it's not working anymore? Can nobody hear him? No. Okay, just thank you, Matiss.
Can you hear me now? Oh, there we go. All right.
Okay, last statement before I turn.
So traditional venture capital and corporate venture capital are quite different. And so you've seen deal sizes change as a result of overall economic conditions. Now, we are still as active as ever.
Okay, it seems to be.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Still,
okay. So
No. Okay, last mic. 3 times is a charm. Let's try. We're down to the last mic, everyone. Okay.
I think they're running out of charge.
Maybe Matiss the hardware guy, can fix it.
A few more electrons.
Okay.
It works. It works.
It works.
For
Okay.
now.
I think, did you feel free to finish the last sentence? And then,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, well, so basically deal sizes have changed, and so you're seeing folks being more selective in what they invest in.
Right, okay. And Benjamin, is that something that you've observed as well? And then also, can you share just a few short comments from the traditional VC's perspective over the last, what you've been observing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's an important distinction because on the one hand, we're purely financially driven. And that means we have no strategic interest as having an established corporate, but we look for returns. And we started our fund with a thesis of, okay, we invest into software infrastructure because then everyone will build on top. We built the NLP tooling and now AI hype has kicked off and everyone is building on the rails that we invested in.
Natural language processing?
Natural language processing. And so basically a financially driven investor starts with a thesis. You have a certain thesis about a certain sector outperforming another sector. And then you stay true to this thesis and you look for great companies in there. And now, of course, environmental conditions change, the war has happened. Sure, now different trends are emerging, and so are other funds emerging, like defense funds are now starting. But that's not our strategy. Like, our playbook is really to invest into software infrastructure, and that's what we stay true to. And we come in at very early stage, pre-seed, seed stage. These are a couple of people with some innovation, maybe some funding, maybe not even some revenue, but a first MVP. Minimal viable product. And that means for us, actually very little has changed, as we're not pursuing any hype cycle or chasing any trend. We got a thesis that we're following, and at pre-seed and seed stage, it's pretty much rock and roll as it used to be. Like, we're happily deploying, other investors are happily deploying, and we're looking forward to back more great teams.
Right, okay, we can talk about the different funding stages in a little bit too, but Matiss, let me ask you what you've been observing. I think your perspective is interesting in the sense that you said you joined the National Guard as a result of the war, do I remember correctly, right? And then so the exposure to the military, people asking themselves, will I defend my country in case of an aggression from a foreign country, right? So it's been on everybody's mind, so whether they liked it or not, the military and these kind of questions have been, people have been thinking about them a lot. And so that exposure, I think, also changed something, right?
Of course, it changed. And let me ask a quick question. How many of you are driving a motorcycle?
Quick show of hands. Anybody? There's
No, okay.
one, and the technician. There you go.
5, yes, I'm also.
Okay, 3, very good.
So, but those who are not driving the motorcycles, maybe you have the right competencies, you have the right knowledge, but you will never ever come up with the idea, with solution for the problem that is for motorcycle drivers, because you don't know anything about that. And it's also about the defense system. If you haven't spent a week in the forest, so you don't know what actually does it mean to serve and to spend a week, and not maybe in the most comfortable area. So also, from the VC fund perspective, behind every VC fund, behind every startup, LPs, limited partners, so those who invest the money in the VC funds, there are some physical persons with their experience, with their attitude. So also we, as the investment fund, we are financially driven, but I'm investing in the companies who are developing whatever, but in the end, I will be proud of that. So of course, I have to deliver some money back to our investors, but our agreement is that we are making in the investments in the company that we are proud about them. So, and this is one very important criteria. And then, of course, the war, it was a trigger. So, for instance, one of our companies, the technology, all of them, to remotely control the vehicle. So, for instance, you are sitting here and you can control whatever, the bus, the private car in Tartu. So 100 kilometers away. So there is a specific business opportunity. And then suddenly you understood, okay, if you can control the vehicle in Tartu, maybe in certain conditions you can control the vehicle in the battlefield and to do something, let's say, in different areas. So again, and now, starting from last year, people hear about the war all the time. And then, of course, suddenly you are using a piece of something and you think, okay, maybe it can be used also in the military sector. And this is just a business opportunity. We are not talking about startups who are entering in the military sector. It's just another opportunity. So they will be selling their technology, let's say, for us and also for the defense sector. So, and this is what happened starting from the last year, and that actually yes, it triggered people to think a little bit wider.
Right. Right. So you're saying with this dual use, that's it's a nice segue into the discussion about dual use. So civilian applications, existing products. Now with this new exposure, the way you call it, triggered, right?
Yep.
Them thinking about how this could be used in a military way, or for the military, right? I think, Brad, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I wanted to just to add in, I agree with your comments, but I also wanted to add in that not only does technology flow from commercial applications to defense-relevant applications, but also there are a lot of examples of it flowing the other direction. So large investments that are made, say, in everything from semiconductors to machine learning to materials, you name it, that were made to advance defense applications are finding their way into all kinds of applications. And so DARPA, for example, has run grand challenges, and
The U.S.
in the U.S.
Yeah.
and a lot of money went into these challenges, and a result of a lot of those challenges, you're finding in Tesla now, you're finding in other applications, and so technology flows both directions.
Right.
And so, we take from commercial applications benefit from government applications, and so that's really, frankly, what you want, is to make the highest and best use of advances for the best applications.
Sure. Yeah. So you're saying too that, or that's what my interpretation is that there's very few startups or companies that focus solely or that are solely offensive tech oriented, right? So it's in most cases it's dual use, and we can talk about the implications and some of the maybe moral considerations there in just a little bit. But what you just added though is that hardware startups primarily focused on civilian applications, their products being used without them knowing or inadvertently by companies that then build something without them actually adding to their own portfolio the military use. So did I understand correctly that it's kind of inadvertent in a way, or?
No, I wouldn't say it's inadvertent to a company, but let's say, for example, if you were to read the book Chip Wars, that really is a great history of investments that were made in semiconductors that were clearly had defense applications, but every one of us are benefiting every day from those investments that were made in the 70s and the 80s in semiconductor technology that makes it what it is today. So there's really a lot of symbiosis between commercial and government type of applications, and they work actually very well together if you let them.
Right, okay. So maybe we can now turn to the moral and ethical considerations when existing in, for the lack of a better definition, like I said, let's just stick with the term defense tech startups. So when it comes to the LP agreements, etc., is there anything that's off limits? Of course, anything is potential dual use, so just prohibiting it outright from the beginning, I think is next to impossible in a way. But in the agreements, when you invest, is there anything really in the fine print that you specifically say to also protect yourself in a way in your investment? Maybe, Benjamin, you can comment on that.
In the end, it really depends on your fund and your value proposition, right? If you're a defense fund, of course, you're investing into defense-related startups. Then, on the other hand, for most venture capital funds, they explicitly exclude in the LPA, that's the Limited Partnership Agreement, which manages the investment into your VC fund, they exclude everything, weapons, sex, drugs, and anything else related to that.
Tobacco.
And, tobacco, you name it. And so, yes, these are restrictive on purpose, but then also touching on this dual use case, I mean, we're a software infrastructure investor, right? You put up an open source project that is for computer vision. You can use it to detect cats. You can use it to detect other things. So in the end,
that's
you
what I
sometimes
meant by inadvertent also.
don't know what it's being used for. And we're not the ethical committee to decide, oh, this might be abused in the future. We cannot invest. That's simply a choice that we cannot make.
Right, but would you invest in a company, in a startup that with its MVP focuses on offensive capabilities? only?
Well, we have not done this in the past, and I think we really need to distinguish two things, because startups are really about focus. And then it depends whether this is an MVP, this is a pilot project, you got this just to get you going, and that might be a very valid go-to-market strategy if you have then a large commercial opportunity that you can explore. But it's a whole totally different story if you're building a defense tech startup and you're going through these long sales cycles, long contracts, you need ties to this industry, which we cannot provide, and which might be also part of the reason why we've not invested into a startup that is very heavily relying on government contracts in the defense industry.
Right, okay. Government contracts is a good next topic to talk about, but is there anything else that you wanted to add to this in terms of the dual use case? Okay, if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask it later. We have about 15 minutes left, so we'll set aside the last 5 minutes, like I said, for questions. So let's talk about what I just said. One of the things. Let's come back to one of the things that you talked about 5 minutes ago in terms of different funding rounds, right? So you're focusing on early stage, and then the military defense tech is very capital intensive, I presume, and it's got long life cycles, right? So in terms of the average, compared to the average other tech sector, VCs will get a return on investment probably at a later stage. So let's talk about some of the challenges there, seeing it through all the way to the end and the willingness to invest. I think, Brett, you talked about in terms of funding. There's a bit of it's gone down in Europe a little bit, etc. So yeah, who wants to start about the different funding rounds and access to capital?
Okay, well, I think the challenge for all startups is that they're trying to breathe life into this idea. So it starts with an idea. It starts with a strong vision around what the art of the possible might be. And I don't know how many people in the room here are entrepreneurs themselves. And
quick show of hands, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
that's it.
So
okay, just a handful.
There are quite a few. Not knowing any of these folks, I would say that probably what they would consider their top job is always to be raising capital. And so having sufficient funding to be able to make progress on their idea and to breathe life into it is something that is ever present. And so, my thoughts on it is that whether you're sourcing your capital from friends and family, whether you have a party making a round of venture capital, a traditional venture capital round, basically, or a corporate like ourselves, that probably a portfolio of those sources is something that a company is best served by. But basically, however you can get your capital is at the right terms and under the right conditions and with the right personalities is really important. So,
sorry to interrupt, but this sounds very generic that you can also apply to other sectors. But is there something like, do you have any specific advice then for startup founders in the defense tech sector?
Yes, exactly. And so for every sector, there tends to be folks who will focus on those sectors. And so NATO, for example, has created a very bold initiative known as Diana, and that stands for Defense Innovation and Acceleration North Atlantic. And it is a network of both accelerators and testing centers, primarily throughout Europe. And then there is also alongside of that a NATO Innovation Fund called NIF. There is a NIF 1. It closed at about 1 or 1.1 billion euro. There are plans for NIF 2, 3, and 4 also to close. And so those are all very focused on defense tech. So NATO realizes that a lot of defense tech is difficult to do, long life cycles, capital intensive potentially. And so if you have a product that has applications that are defense relevant, let's say it's a software type of a company, artificial intelligence, and let's say using the analogy that you use that your system may be able to help you to detect cats. Well, maybe it can also help you to detect bad things out there as well. as well as friendly cats. And so there's
Aggressive bears, for example.
Exactly, just what I was thinking. And so I would say that you want to be knowledgeable about those kind of capital sources and that are specialized for defense relevant. And so if your tech building this mythical cat software is also defense relevant, then try and tap into defense relevant companies like ours, the NIF fund, the NATO, Diana. Take advantage of all of those kind of things that are a part of it.
Right.
Get out and meet people and basically do your research, know the marketplace so you can try and find people like me, find Lockheed Martin Ventures, find the NATO Innovation Fund.
All right, okay, so, know the industry, etc. Okay, so let's turn to the other perspectives. Before I do that, a quick follow-up on the NIF fund. So do you know how many startups were in that cohort, or can you just, in 3-4 sentences, explain that a little bit more?
NIF is a fund. It's not a collection from an accelerator, for example.
Right.
It is a pool of funds that was generated by member states, parties to NATO, and that is available for the startup ecosystem. You can get more. I'm not from NATO, but you can just Google NATO Diana, and you'll get a lot of information. Very useful. Something that everyone here should be aware of if you're looking for capital.
Right. Thanks. Okay. So Matiss, if I'm a defense tech startup founder and I'm very early stage, maybe I don't even have an MVP yet, and if I'm looking for an accelerator to join, what's your advice? What should I focus on and keep in mind?
So the first advice is look for the accelerator who is focused on that, because it
Niche
means,
accelerators.
Yes, because it means that the one who supports the accelerator, the investors, whatever, they have agreed to wait for a longer period of time, most probably. Because in our case, we are not saying no to such type of startups, but our decision is very rational. And if I see that it will take maybe 10 of years for you to get to the market, and it doesn't matter, are we talking about med tech, about health tech, about defense, so I know that I have to exit from the company in, 5 years. So that's it. I will never ever make any money in this case. So, and I will not invest in such type of company. So that's why suggestion is do your homework, take a look to the organizations who indeed are sharing the values you have. So when they're ready to wait for a longer period of time. It's also when we talk about environmental things. So again, all this, so it goes together.
Right, okay. And Benjamin, if I'm a bit further along in the startup process, maybe I already have an MVP or a product and I'm looking for early stage funding to scale, right? What's your advice for those founders at that stage?
I mean, the advice doesn't really change. Like, there are funds with a different value proposition, a different thesis, and there are some funds that have really signed up for the defense thing, and there are other funds like us that have a different thesis that invest in software infrastructure. And really, look for A, funds that support defense, that can wait. B, look for grants. Look for example, the EIC program. Look for other programs.
What's EIC? Sorry?
That's the Accelerator from the European Union. So look for different government initiatives and also funds that could be a really good fit for what you're doing.
Right, okay, so know the available support, Okay, great. We have about 7 minutes left, so before we field questions, I think there's at least a couple, both from women, but we'll see, maybe also from men, we'll see. One last question for my panel is government contracts and procurement. So in most countries, in Germany maybe perhaps most notoriously, the government procurement cycle is extremely long, and which is also a major reason why the German military is plagued by late delivery and just understaffed and having a lack of equipment. But now that we have a new defense minister, David Pistorius, and among other things, he said he wants to speed up the government procurement. And he also wants to buy more off-the-shelf technology rather than developing, sometimes for decades, very cost-intensive, capital-intensive own products, like the Eurofighter, for example. Although that's probably more on the, I guess you can call that a success compared to some of the other failures. But yeah, how can you describe or comment on that change and the opportunity that comes with it? The shortening the life cycles of government procurement contracts. Anybody who wants to go first?
Well, I'll start
Brad?
off.
Sure.
So just a couple of thoughts. So I think the notion of making it simpler for folks to get access to these supply chains, just that notion and that knowledge that there's that gap in the challenge is a great start. But I would also say that you want to make sure, depending on the kind of thing that you have to be selling, if you have a finished product already, that's a commercial off-the-shelf item that you want to be selling into a supply chain, that's one thing. If you have something that's emerging, a new technology that you're trying to nurture, again, you're trying to breathe life into this thing, you want to make sure that you aren't talking to the parts of the government procurement or even defense contractors that are just focused on bringing in the next bolt. You know, they're looking at what is the specification, do you meet that, yes or no, how has it been tested, all of that kind of thing. That's one thing. But remember, there are parts of governments that are doing active R&D work. And so they have more tolerance for early stage, lower TRL. They're expecting you to be early TRL. That's where opportunities are. That's where change is made. It's the world is going to be changed by new technologies, new ways of doing things, older technologies applied in new ways. That's really where the change is going to be. So I would say, make sure you know that just because one part of the organization, either a contractor or the government, isn't a fit for you, there's likely another place that is a good fit. You want to make sure you're talking to the right folks for where you are.
Got it. Okay. I want to make sure we have enough time left for the questions from the audience. So any quick comments in 30 seconds or less?
Yes, my suggestion is, so also in the government, there are sitting the real persons who most probably are not interested to keep the whole process as long as possible. So because that's where they will be shooting in their leg. So again, the process has become smoother, easier. So we are sitting in the same boat.
Great, thanks. Okay, with that, let's turn to the audience. Maybe you just introduce yourself quickly, your background, and then the question, short as possible. Thanks.
Very well, gentlemen. So you can call me Afina if you want, but my name is Victoria Trimble, and Victoria works very well with defense. I am managing director of Coinvest Capital, and we are definitely the first, I guess, so far the only one who are fully authorized as of 7th of March to invest in all things defense except for retail trade and guns. So we are also evergreen, so we don't have time pressure. And speaking on fees, our mandate is to fill in any gap we might find in the market. We are fully funded with public money. And you know what fees will matter if the war will cross our borders. So I already have business angels accredited who have strong military background, very top-notch. So my question is, who wants to and who wants to pitch to us, because we have, as our angels say, the best terms in the world for business angels. We keep only 6% per year and we give all profits to them.
Okay.
So come to me and let's invest together.
That's more like a comment, right, than a question?
Who wants to invest with us?
Okay.
Question.
All right, okay, fair. She's taking the opportunity to get... I think I have to ask, she raised her hand first already 10 minutes ago, so let's try to keep it fairly short so the gentleman also has an opportunity to ask his question. Thanks. Introduce yourself and then please say your comment or question, please. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Also have kind of a comment on our shout out. Thank you, Brad, for already introducing NATO Diana. I'm representing NATO Diana, so launching an accelerator in Estonia this year already. So shout out to all of the dual use startups here to reach out. Let's talk about the applications. There's grant money up to a few €100,000. An amazing program throughout the alliance, and definitely very interesting talk and topic. So thank you for that. Basically, no question.
Okay, very good.
So,
that leaves enough time for the gentleman to ask his question. So I think you'll also have a chance to talk to Brett afterwards. So very good. Introduce yourself and then comment or question.
My name is Eugene. I'm a professor and I'm based in a country which is a neutral country in Ireland. But my past was I was one of the developers of algorithms for Israeli system Iron Dome. So you probably know, all of you know about the system. So now we are working on drone technology and we're participating with, and we are working also with United Nations Development Program on mine detection. But the question is landmine detection. But the question is how we can do the things when the country is not the member of NATO and it's formally neutral. So this is where could be probably a conflict of interests, and what I want to ask to
Do
ask
you have a specific country in mind? Ukraine
no,
is not
no. What
NATO
I'm an
member.
island. So island is a country which is neutral country, but the things that we are developing, which was not initial, it's a dual-use product, which is now going to be used for mine detection, and this is where we really see the problem as being the country which cannot be part of the NATO.
Yeah, who wants to take that question?
Well, I would
We have
say that
40 seconds left.
being a part of NATO or not NATO is not as relevant as how good is that technology at helping to solve an important problem. Mines, for example, is an important problem, and if it can contribute, I think you're going to find people who are interested in having a discussion with you. So I wouldn't think that the NATO factor alone is the biggest factor.
1, 2 minutes. Okay. Very good. If there are no other questions, then I have one last question for my audience, kind of as a wrap up and also looking into the future. Okay, there's no other questions then. All right. So I was just wondering if you could just, if you have any predictions for the next maybe midterm, because as we talked about, the life cycles are rather long in defense tech. So I don't know, aside from maybe 1 or 2 startups, any major names, or at least not startups like with a that are become as famous and as served as many people, for example, as Airbnb or Bolt. But are there any startups, from your perspective, that have the potential to become unicorns? Maybe there's already a unicorn. I don't know. Tell me if I'm missing that. But is there any, like Milrem, for example, has had some attention? The Estonian robotics manufacturer, also dual use, I think. And then there's Helsing, right? The German AI company that has a defense application. What are you expecting, Brett? Maybe let's start with you for the next 5 to 10 years in terms of quantity of startups, but also do they have just 1 or 2 or a few startups have the potential to become as big as Bolt or Airbnb?
Well, I think if history has taught us anything, is that we see innovation happening in great times. We see it happening in quiet times. And so if that's any prelude to the future, I think we're going to be seeing some amazing companies that are starting today that right now might be nothing but a set of PowerPoints. And over the next several years, you're going to see them become unicorns and then some. And I think there is little doubt on that. We're going to see things. A few years ago, I was talking with companies that were literally just PowerPoints, and now they have valuations that are billion-dollar plus valuations and booming in many different ways. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think that you're going to see a downturn in that.
Okay. Not sure if
progress marches on.
Right, okay. I'm not sure if that's entirely positive, because I guess that also means that there might be, because if you need to sell out of products, then that requires a bunch of conflicts too, but it can be also defensive in nature. So not necessarily, hopefully the world can also become a bit more peaceful and still allow these defense tech startups to grow.
Well, and not just in defense tech. I'm saying that there are amazing companies that are providing satellite imagery that are both useful for defense, but are also extremely useful for
dual use again
for climate change. And so, and I would say their impact on climate change is even greater than that on defense. So I think that in a way, saying that something is just defense or non-defense is a kind of an artificial distinction.
Right. Okay. Thanks for reminding us. Okay. Last 2 comments from Benjamin and Matiss. Very short closing comments. Last thoughts. What does the future hold?
Who knows what will be the future, if I would know that. So what I believe, of course, the number of startups will be more and more who will think about the dual use of the technologies, just because, for instance, NATO funds, so it's a huge amount of money, and of course a lot of people will be motivated to think about dual use because there is available fundings there. Also, don't be afraid thinking about defense systems. I'm practicing martial arts, not just to attack someone, but to feel safe. So this is the mindset, how you think about technologies. And I believe in this part of the world we have mindset to feel safe, not to attack someone. But we have to feel strong and to be strong.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, Benjamin?
Want to finish off with an investment thesis. We're using algorithm bits to upgrade assets in our material world. And everyone has noticed that AI is happening, so I'm not telling you anything new as a software and AI investor, but AI is happening for everything. Not just ChatGPT. Sorry. No. So basically, as an AI and software investor, I'm not telling you anything new.
It's not the mic.
It's not the mic.
I'm kidding.
Let's see.
Okay. This one maybe?
This one?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
3 times.
Lovely.
charm.
Okay. Finish line. I'm an AI and software investor. I'm not telling you anything new that AI is happening. Everyone has been hyped about ChatGPT. But this holds also true for material discovery, for computational fluid dynamics, for everything that is simulation related, which will eventually lead to better materials and better tank armor. Thanks.
Great closing note. Thank you. AI is obviously also a topic we can discuss more. Thank you very much for your attention. A short round of applause for our panelists. And my name is Ben Bathke, and enjoy the rest of TechChill. Thank you very much. Now back to the MC.